The learning objective of this chapter is to secure a limited working knowledge of stowage, particular precautions, segregation, cargo transport units on particular vessel types, temperature control provisions, the transport of wastes, and exemptions, approvals and certificates. While the previous chapters have addressed provisions for individual packages and the substances they contain, the potential problems are multiplied when they are all brought together in the same ship. The way that they are loaded is called stowage. The way in which problems that adjacent packages can have on each other in the event of emergency is avoided is by a process called segregation. Of course, one of the most dangerous ways in which a hazard may spread is through fire, and an understanding of the ways in which this is restricted or prevented is important. Particular vessel types can also have a significant impact on the handling procedures for packages, vehicles and containers loaded with dangerous goods. Certain types of dangerous goods will also require specialized handling. Finally, there are particular shipments which require special certificates, and you should know that there is a procedure for these. Except in the case of Class 1 explosives, ships are divided into two groups for the purpose of making appropriate stowage recommendations. (1) Cargo ships or passenger ships carrying a limited number of passengers. This number is a maximum of 25, or calculated as 1 per 3 meters of length of the ship. 2. Other passenger ships in which a larger number of passengers is carried. Substances, materials and articles shall be stowed according to a number of stowage categories.
These are as follows.
Click on the categories for more information. Category A.
Cargo or passenger ships as limited above, on deck or under deck. Other passenger ships, on deck or under deck.
Category B.
Cargo or passenger ships as limited above, on deck or under deck. Other passenger ships, on deck only.
Category C.
Cargo or passenger ships as limited above, on deck only. Other passenger ships, on deck only.
Category D.
Cargo or passenger ships as limited above, on deck only. Other passenger ships prohibited.
Category E.
Cargo or passenger ships as limited above, on deck or under deck. Other passenger ships prohibited.
Because of the speed at which an accident involving dangerous goods may escalate and spread through the whole ship, the transport of some particular dangerous substances, materials or articles is not permitted at all aboard passenger ships carrying more than 25 passengers. If spillages or leakages occur in an under-deck location, precautions shall be taken to prevent the inadvertent pumping of the material through the machinery space bilge system.
Drums containing dangerous goods shall always be stowed in an upright position, unless otherwise authorized by a competent authority. This applies to both drums in an open stow and those packed in a cargo transport unit.
Where on or under deck stowage is permitted, stowage under deck is recommended wherever possible, except for certain articles of Class 1 explosives. Fiberboard boxes and other packages susceptible to water damage shall be stowed under deck, or, if they are stowed on deck, be located in a protected location that does not expose them to weather or seawater. Stowage on deck only is recommended in cases where constant supervision is required, or access to the package is particularly required, or there is a substantial risk of formation of explosive gas mixtures, development of highly toxic vapors, or unobserved corrosion of the ship. Where dangerous goods are stowed on deck, access to hydrants, sounding pipes, and other fittings essential to the safe management of the vessel shall not be impeded. At all times the stowage of dangerous goods shall be so arranged as to ensure clear walkways and access to facilities are maintained, and that any special provisions regarding stowage of dangerous goods possessing a particular hazard can be applied. Packages and other receptacles that would normally be stowed on deck only when in a full condition may be stowed again on deck when empty or under deck, provided the space is mechanically ventilated. Empty, unclean cylinders that have previously contained gas of a toxic nature shall, however, only be stowed on deck. Some substances need to be protected from radiant heat and large temperature variations. Such substances shall therefore be protected from strong sunlight by locating them other than on the top or at the side of an on-deck stow, and be stowed away from sources of direct heat, such as heating coils, steam pipes, uninsulated machinery bulkheads, and the like. Dangerous cargo shall be stowed clear of living quarters, in consideration of the possibility that dangerous vapors may leak and be drawn into the accommodation, machinery space, and other work areas through air intakes, ventilation ducts, and openings in bulkheads, such as doors and ports. All infectious substances shall be stowed in a position separated by a complete compartment or hold from living quarters. Marine pollutants are to be securely stowed in such a manner as to minimize the risk of them being lost overboard. Under-deck stowage is preferred where permitted, except where a weather-deck stowage provides equivalent protection. Where on-deck only stowage is required, packages containing such marine pollutants shall be stowed in well-protected areas. Foodstuffs can be contaminated very easily, and, if then eaten, this can lead to very serious health problems. Toxic gases and toxic substances shall be stowed away from foodstuffs, except where the substances and the foodstuffs are in separate closed cargo transport units. Infectious substances shall be stowed in a position separated by a complete compartment or hold from all foodstuffs. Radioactive materials shall be stowed separated from foodstuffs. Corrosive substances shall be stowed away from foodstuffs.
The precise definition of these stowage terms is dealt with in a following section.
Goods of Class 1, explosives, also have to be protected from the following: heat, water, any potential hazards presented by electrical equipment cables, and lightning strike. There are special stowage requirements for rockets and rocket motors. Security is a particular concern for these goods. Goods of Class 2, gases, also have to be protected from the following: heat, movement, and the accumulation of dangerous vapors. Goods of Class 3, flammable liquids, also have to be protected from heat, the accumulation of dangerous vapors, and must also be stowed in relation to other areas of the ship. Goods of Class 4.1, flammable solids, 4.2, substances liable to spontaneous combustion, and 4.3, substances which, on contact with water, emit flammable gases, must also be protected from heat, the accumulation of dangerous vapors, and must be stowed in relation to other areas of the ship, and with consideration of the possible need for jettison in the event of an emergency. Goods of Class 5.1, oxidizing substances, and 5.2, organic peroxides, must also be protected from contact with moisture and water, potential sources of ignition, and must be stowed in relation to other areas of the ship, and with consideration of the possible need for jettison in the event of an emergency. Goods of Class 6.1, toxic substances, must also be protected from the accumulation of dangerous vapors, and must be stowed in relation to other areas of the ship. They must also be inspected after discharge for possible contamination. Special attention must be paid to toxic substances which are also flammable liquids.
Particular provisions apply to the stowage of goods of Class 7 radioactive material. They are very specific and include those relating to
the categories of radioactive material, the maximum quantities based on transport indexes of the consignments, and the need for monitoring of consignments during shipment. Goods of Class 8, corrosive substances, must be protected from contact with moisture and water, the accumulation of dangerous vapors, and heat. Various special provisions apply to the stowage of goods of Class 9, miscellaneous dangerous substances and articles. They relate specifically to precautions for certain fertilizers. When dangerous goods are loaded closely together on a ship, there may be a risk of leakage, contamination, or a dangerous reaction if something goes wrong during the voyage. Careful consideration therefore needs to be given to the locations of all packages of dangerous goods. If a dangerous reaction is possible, then those goods need to be separated from each other. This procedure is referred to as segregation. The principles of segregation apply to all cargo spaces on deck or under deck and to all types of ship and cargo transport unit. Incompatible goods shall be segregated from one another. Incompatible goods are those which, when stowed together, result in a hazardous situation in the event of spillage, leakage, or any other accident. Secondary hazards must also be considered. The following terms are applicable to the stowage of packages containing dangerous goods, and it is necessary to examine them in more detail before continuing. Click on the terms for more information. The principal manual method of determining which general segregation provisions apply is by reference to a special table contained in the code. Many companies utilized computerized stowage programs, which include electronic versions of this segregation table. Since the properties of substances, materials, and articles vary greatly, the table is only to be considered as a tool that supports the dangerous goods list. The specific segregation provisions indicated in the list will always take precedence over the general provisions in the table. Click on the button below to see the table. For the purposes of segregation, the code considers different transport methods individually: segregation of packages, segregation of cargo transport units aboard container ships, segregation of cargo transport units on board roll-on, roll-off ships, segregation in ship-borne barges and onboard barge-carrying ships, and segregation between bulk materials possessing chemical hazards and dangerous goods in packaged form. Chapter 7 of the code contains a series of diagrams based on the above categories to enable the user to see the necessary segregation requirements. There are 3 steps to establishing the required segregation provisions. 1. Consult the dangerous goods list. 2. Refer to the segregation table. 3. Determine the required segregation provisions according to the means of transport. This planning is done on computer in many ships and offices today. In the event of an incident involving dangerous goods, reference will be made to the emergency response procedures for ships carrying dangerous goods contained in the supplement to the IMDG code. Additional general information will be found in the vessel's SOLAS training manual. This is something the senior officers will do automatically, and you should follow their instructions carefully in an emergency. You should also pay attention to their explanations during emergency drills. In the event of exposure to a dangerous substance, reference will be made to the Medical First Aid Guide for use in accidents involving dangerous goods. Recommendations on how to handle spillages will vary according to whether the stowage is on deck or under deck, and whether the substance is a liquid or a solid. In general, the recommendation is to wash spillages on deck overboard with copious amounts of water. But disposal of spilt dangerous goods overboard is a matter of judgment for the master, bearing in mind that the safety of personnel has priority over pollution of the sea. The master will always issue orders on this, and you should never act without first obtaining clear instructions. If it is safe to do so, those substances listed as marine pollutants should be collected for safe disposal, and absorbent material should be used to collect spilt liquid. Care should be taken to guard against the effects of toxic vapors and the possibility of reduced oxygen levels in the vicinity of a spillage, particularly in confined spaces. If necessary, self-contained breathing apparatus should be used. Before loading, cargo transport units used for the transport of dangerous goods shall be examined for damage, leakage, or sifting of the contents. Any unit found with such defects shall not be accepted for shipment. This is often done well before the unit reaches the ship, but the crew should be alert to damage that may have occurred on the way to the ship. Care shall be taken in the event that a cargo transport unit needs to be opened for any reason. The nature of the contents and the possibility of leakage or the accumulation of toxic vapors leading to an unsafe atmosphere should be considered. Some products react on contact with moisture, and care should be taken wherever possible to restrict the development of condensation within cargo transport units. Similarly, where it is required that dangerous goods be kept as cool as possible, consideration should be given to protecting a cargo transport unit against heat, such as from direct sunlight. Empty cargo transport units which previously contained dangerous goods shall be inspected to ensure that no dangerous residues remain. Care needs to be given to the stowage of cargo transport units containing flammable gases or liquids having a very low flash point, particularly under deck. There is a risk from the heating or cooling equipment on refrigerated or heated cargo transport units, as this may be a potential source of ignition. For the segregation of cargo transport units on full container ships or ships of other types but fitted to provide permanent stowage of containers, there is another special table in the code. The type of container is also important here. Closed unit. A unit which totally encloses the contents by permanent structures. Fabric sides or tops are not acceptable under this definition. Open unit. Any unit which by definition is not a closed unit. Loading and unloading of the vehicle decks on a ro-ro vessel must be properly supervised by qualified and appointed personnel. Such spaces shall be securely closed during the voyage. Dangerous goods packed in cargo transport units are permitted to be stowed in the conventional way on vehicle decks, weather decks, or in cargo holds, provided all requirements of the IMDG code are met and the units are properly secured. Regular inspections of spaces containing such units by an authorized crew member are required, in order to gain early detection of any hazard. Because of the unique design features of ro-ro vessels, special segregation provisions again apply to this type of vessel, and again there is a special table in the code. Barge-carrying ships are another special case because of their design. Once again, special provisions are made for the transport of packaged, dangerous goods on these ships, and they are detailed in the code. Certain substances, mainly organic peroxides and self-reactive substances of class 4.1, must be carried at specified low temperatures. The paperwork will include a note of the temperature at which emergency procedures must be implemented. There are different methods of temperature control, and various factors will influence which is employed, including the difference between the control temperature and the anticipated ambient temperatures, the effectiveness of any thermal insulation, and the duration of the voyage. Methods of temperature control include thermal insulation,
thermal insulation with a coolant system, single or dual mechanical refrigeration, and
combined mechanical refrigeration and coolant system, and any electrical fittings shall be explosion-proof and of an approved pattern. Dangerous waste material shall be transported in accordance with the relevant international conventions, and, where it concerns the transport by sea, with the provisions of the IMDG code. A waste containing only one constituent, which is a dangerous substance, shall be regarded as being that substance for the purposes of the code. A waste containing two or more dangerous constituents shall be classified according to the predominant hazard. In some cases, special certificates, approvals, or permits, called exemptions, are required for the transportation of dangerous goods by sea. The way in which these are issued and controlled is detailed in the IMDG code. Such papers are issued by competent authorities, national government departments responsible for enforcing the provisions of the IMDG code in a particular country, or agencies and organizations which have been delegated to carry out certain related tasks, such as the testing of packagings.
Click the button to see examples of exemption and approval certificates.